Hey, everybody. It is so good to have you here. I'm here with my friend Andy Ostroy, who writes The Back Room with Andy Ostroy on Substack and is just an all around incredible guy who I love. And I'm so happy to have you here, Andy, to talk about this completely messed up time weird period that we live in, but especially about what's been going on just the last 24 hours. So, welcome to the show. So good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Did you watch the Kennedy nonsense yesterday?
I did every damn minute of it.
I mean, I was supposed to be on MSNBC and they actually canceled my segment and they were very sorry about canceling it. And I said, "Are you kidding me? This is such good television. Like, blow out me, blow out everybody else, and just go live with this because it's so good." And it was riveting because, like, I couldn't tell if he's just a sociopath who actually doesn't remember lying from one minute to the next or whether he's just a typical member of the Trump administration who just lies because that's what you're expected to do. But there were so many instances where he said something, and then a senator, regardless of whether they were a Democrat or Republican senator, would say something like, "Well, Senator Kennedy, you just said X." And he's like, "I didn't say that. Why would you say I said that? I didn't say this." And it was like insane because you're almost expected to get the videotape, go to the videotape like within 2 seconds of him saying that. And of course, you can't do that in a hearing, which is, I think, what he's relying on. But maybe he's just got that brain worm that doesn't remember what he said from one minute to the next. What do you think?
Yes,
Yes to all of
I
the above.
I think it's
All
all of the
right.
above. I think I think that little brain worm is still floating around somewhere. I think he's a sociopath. I think he's a liar. I think he's evil. I think he subscribes to the Trump philosophy of, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? There's no let's go to the videotape because they don't care about videotape. Why? Because fake news, doctored. It's not real. We're living in very strange times. There's nothing anymore that somebody can just go like, but there's that video. Now it's like video's fake.
Yeah, and I think if this were just a bunch of pundits sitting around making fun of it, it would be fun. But it's not that. It's literally one man who has effectively destroyed decades, if not centuries, of scientific advancement and is now telling people that everything that has kept them alive and everything that's kept our lifespan increasing over the last decade is just nonsense. And it's not anything to be believed. And in fact, the very things that have kept us alive, like vaccines, are things that are making it much more dangerous for them to live. And there is a huge segment of the population, by the way, on both sides of the aisle, who subscribes to that. And to have that come from the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who oversees the chief medical officers of this nation, aside from the Surgeon General, is just crazy to me.
He is the worst possible person on this planet to be in charge of our nation's health. It would be like if Jeffrey Dahmer was named head of the Anti-Cannibal Society. Like, there's no, there's, I can't even describe how dangerous it is. I've had friends, and I'm polling people like, "Hey guys, if you're having trouble going to CVS or elsewhere to get the COVID vaccines, let me know." I'm getting people telling me they can't get the vaccine. This is insane.
In New York?
This is in New York. Yeah.
Wow.
This is insane. And this is just the beginning. We're just the beginning of flu season, of COVID season. Like, I don't know how we got here. We're questioning polio vaccines. Children are dying from measles. Like, it's insanity. But I think he's crazy. He's crazy. So that's why it's crazy.
And you just,
Crazy brings on crazy.
yeah, and you just had Florida get rid of all vaccine mandates. And I mean, you have
Yeah.
kids, I have kids. Like, you put them in daycare, they better be vaccinated.
Yeah. And their Surgeon General down there, or whatever his title
Yeah,
is, he's like,
comparing it to slavery.
who am I to tell you about what you should do health wise? Like, no, you're actually the person who should tell us what to do about our health. You're in charge of Florida's health. I don't know what else to say. We're surrounded by, to say incompetent, unqualified, ignorant people would be a gross understatement. These people are just the worst of the worst, and they're evil. Who wants to take away vaccines from children? What, what does that get anybody? Yeah, he says like, oh, I'm waiting for the data, for the science. Have you not seen the reams of data and science that have existed for decades? Decades.
Decades,
I was,
decades.
yeah, you don't know. Like I loved when that Senator Mark Warner said to him, "You're in charge of HHS. You don't know how many people died of COVID." Like, really? He goes, well, I'm waiting for the data. The data on how many people have died from COVID has been out since COVID. Like, the thing about Bobby yesterday is that, like Trump, he's a master at projection. You're making all this stuff up. You're trying to scare people. No, that's exactly what you're doing. He's made that a cottage industry.
Yeah, and I think what's so amazing to me is you have senators on that panel who, by the way, voted to confirm him, who are confronting him on this. And it doesn't matter. I mean, listen, I've worked in the Senate. I've watched the interaction. You're kind of supposed to be deferential when you appear in front of the Senate. It's not to say that you're supposed to agree with them, but I mean, you're supposed to, be a little bit more respectful to the institution. He was so abrasive and it was so Trumpy a performance that I assume it probably just got him points with Trump. But that brings me to a question that I've actually been kind of pondering for a long time. He obviously decided that he was going to get Trump. He decided he was going to throw his lot in with Trump in exchange for this. And Trump obviously cut that deal with him in exchange for getting his support. But now he's won the election. He does not need Bobby Kennedy anymore. It's not like Trump is a man of his word or Trump has some sort of loyalty to anybody but himself.
Mm-hmm.
But yet he's keeping Bobby Kennedy in there, despite the fact that everybody on both sides of the aisle supports vaccines, despite the fact that arguably the biggest accomplishment, really the only accomplishment I would say of Trump's first term, was Operation Warp Speed to get the COVID vaccine up and running quickly. And yet he's keeping Bobby in there and doing, it's not just Bobby. I mean, every other thing that he's doing, whether on the economy, whether on health, is designed. If I were an enemy of the United States, this is exactly what I'd be doing.
Right.
And my question is why? Why? Like, what is it about Donald Trump that is making him keep an anti-vaxxer like that, whose policies will, of course, lead to mass death and chaos? And by the way, let me just add one more thing to that question. This is the same Bobby Kennedy that said that he walked down the street and he can tell if somebody's kids are vaccinated or not. The kids who are vaccinated have a weirdo look on their face and they're somehow weird. His own kids are vaccinated. Donald Trump's
Of course.
kids are all vaccinated. You know how I know that? Because I know where they went to school, and I know those schools have vaccine mandates in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby's kids are all vaccinated per Bobby's family. And so why is Trump allowing this, do you think? What is it about? I mean, why? I don't know.
Well, I have two answers to this question or observation you've made. The first is that I'm not so sure Bobby's long for this world in terms of his job. I think what the senators did yesterday was pretty masterful. They know they can't do anything about Bobby. Bobby, so far, and until this changes, is Trump's little boy toy. Is his little Kennedy that he co-opted.
Yeah.
And Trump loves that. I got a Kennedy. And the whole family hates him now, but I got him. Trump loves that. But what the senators did was say, okay, we may not be able to do anything about Kennedy, but Trump can. So why don't we frame this narrative around things that will possibly piss off Donald Trump? So let's talk about Operation Warp Speed. Let's talk about this being Trump's signature achievement that maybe he even deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for. Secretary Kennedy, do you believe he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize? Do you believe that Operation Warp Speed was brilliant? Do you believe that it created a vaccine that's, as Trump himself said, saved millions of lives? Now, if you're loyal to Trump and spinning the party line, the answer is yes, absolutely. But that's not what Bobby Kennedy did. He waffled, he stammered, he equivocated, he obfuscated, he contradicted himself, which they caught him in. Like, I think he should get a Nobel Peace Prize for something that I think killed more people than it saved. Because I'm anti-vax. And he's like, they asked him, how do you square those two things? Why would you want to get a Nobel Peace Prize if the very thing he'd be getting the prize for is something for years you said, you've questioned the efficacy of it. And he just like vomited up some word salad. And so we also know that Donald Trump is all about image, about optics, appearance. He was a TV producer. So everything with him is like a casting call. Why he loves Pete Hegseth. Good hair, good looking guy, speaks clearly. We may not like him, but he stays on point. Kennedy was a disaster yesterday. The body language, the breathing, it was a mess. And so, on the one hand, you could say, okay, Kennedy said Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. And maybe that's the only thing Trump's going to hear. But he basically said Trump didn't do shit about the vaccine. He made things worse. So the question is, what is Trump going to hear? But also, what did he see yesterday? We know Trump's polling is in the toilet. We know he's underwater on his signature issues, crime, immigration, the economy. Things are getting worse, not better. Heads are going to have to roll soon. We know that from his first term, that there was massive turnover. Trump doesn't take blame for anything. So if I'm Trump and I'm watching that performance yesterday, Bobby's head is an easy one to roll. That's my first answer. The other answer is like, why does Trump do what he does? Why does he not care? Why take away a vaccine? What's to gain? Like, I don't think he thinks about anything. I really don't. I think Trump just operates by ego, by id, by fiat. His decisions are not based on any core fundamental strategies, philosophies, opinions, beliefs. It's just like wakes up on a Thursday morning and, whatever. So I don't know. There's no logical answer to your question, but I don't think there's any logic to anything Donald Trump does.
I have a slightly different analysis of it because I really have spent a lot of time thinking about this. Trump knows he lost the 2020 election. I mean, whatever else he says publicly, he knows.
Of course,
he's conceded.
He's even said it.
Yeah, he said it, right? And I think he is furious at this nation for rejecting him. And I think the one thing Donald Trump could not stand to be is a loser, because his father instilled in him from childbirth, effectively from the day he was born, that there's nothing worse than being a loser. And not to psychoanalyze him too much, but I think that is the most awful thing you can possibly say to Donald Trump, that you are a loser. And that is what this country said to him in 2020. Mm-hmm. And not only is he a loser, but he lost to somebody for whom he has no respect. Joe Biden, who according to him was in the basement all of 2020, wasn't really campaigning, and that the American people rose up despite that and voted this idiot in. This is from Trump's perspective, after everything Donald Trump did for them over the first 4 years of his presidency. And from that perspective, I think there is I don't know if he consciously thinks about this, because I don't think he spends a lot of time, as you said, consciously thinking about much. But I think somewhere in the back of his mind, that's what this is about. That he's just angry, and he's filled with anger, and he's filled with a sense of grievance, and he's filled with a sense of vengeance, and it is towards us. It's not towards Democrats on the Hill. It's not towards some specific, it's not Chuck Schumer, it's not Joe Biden. It's all of us. It's America for rejecting him. And if that means that some of us are going to die because we're not strong enough to withstand the measles or the mumps or rubella or God knows what else, is going to be rampant in this country, then that's on us. That's not his problem. He's going to spend the next 4 years taking what is rightly his, whether it's money through his crypto fund, whether it is whatever relationship he has with the Saudis and the Russians and the Chinese and whoever else he's cutting deals with that none of us know about, whether it's enriching his kids on his way out the door. But damn it, before he leaves office, which I think he'll only leave in a coffin, because there's no way in hell that he's ever going to cede power voluntarily. And I think he's got the people in place to be able to keep him there, as opposed to 2020. you know, that's what's going to have to happen. So, I think if I am right about any element of this, and who knows, we're living in a crazily dangerous time right now.
Yeah, I mean, uh, it's interesting what you said about him having an adversity to losing, which is true. But it's how do you define in his head? How do you define losing and winning? I have this conversation with friends of mine all the time where I say, stop analyzing Donald Trump through your head. Get in his head. Because if he's a sociopath, that's not something any of us are familiar with. So you got to really force yourself not to go like, what would Andy Ostroy? What? That's illogical. No, no.
Yeah.
What would a sociopath be doing right now? So, and I was did an episode of my podcast this morning, and I said this back room with Andy Ostroy, shameless plug. Um, to Trump, losing could be winning and winning could be losing, depending upon how we see it. So you co-opt a Kennedy, right? What could be greater for Donald Trump than to make the entire Kennedy family go against Bobby because Trump co-opted it? I got me a Kennedy. And I think perhaps the only thing that could juice this man more than hiring a Kennedy is firing a Kennedy. Trump is all about humiliation. Remember that famous photo? Him, Mitt Romney in the restaurant,
Hmm.
Romney turning around. The look on Romney's face was like, I'm a bitch,
Hmm.
right? Like, because he was. After everything Romney knew about Trump, he still went to, yeah, will you give me that job, sir? Oh, you won't. I'm a bitch.
Yeah.
And now there's this photo for eternity. Trump loves to humiliate people. He likes to take his enemies and just mash them into the ground because, like you said, he's so angry. Dude, you're president twice. Only 45 other people got there, right? You escaped all of your prosecutions. You're a billionaire. Now you're making fuckloads of crypto money. Be happy. But he can't be happy. He cannot be happy because in here, there's no happy with Trump. So I agree with much of what you're saying in terms of his anger, but how he then gets a little happy and feels good is stuff we're not wired to really understand. I have been forcing myself over the years to think like him because then I can analyze him. I analyze him with my own head. I just bang that head into a wall. So I think like the Kennedy situation, it may take days, weeks, maybe a couple of months or so, but I can't see Kennedy lasting very long because there's probably people whispering in his ear, sir, you are a genius. You're going to get a Nobel Peace Prize for something this dude thinks was a failure. He's taking away your luster. So I feel like to him, firing Kennedy won't be that he's a loser. It'll be like, I'm winning. I hired him. I fired him. I hired a Kennedy. I fired a Kennedy. I'm a winner.
But you know what? You're right. And you think about what's happening now in New York. It's actually, you just raised a really good point, right? So, for people who don't know, and I'm going to set the stage here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this because everything you said makes so much sense to me. We have reports here. So, here in New York, you have a hot mayor's race happening. You've got Zoran Mondani, who's the Democratic Socialist who's running, who I deep down believe Donald Trump actually wants to win because then it just perfectly sets up
Absolutely.
you know, tying tying every other
Good
Democrat.
television.
Yeah, it's a great, right? Like you need an adversary. It's like in worldwide, it's like in the WWF, WWE. Like you need the heel, and Mondani's going to be his heel. But and then
Wait,
you got
are you suggesting that Trump and a Muslim won't get along?
I know. Well, if you look at the New York Post today, because that's basically Trump's id, and they this is how they all communicate with him through New York Post editorials. I read it today, and it was like, why Zohran Mamdani's horrible in crime? And they're like, Zohran Mamdani, comma, Muslim, comma. I'm like, what does that have to do with his stance on crime? I mean, literally, they're so overt about it. Um, but anyway, so you've got Zohran Mamdani running. You've got Andrew Cuomo, who lost the primary to Mamdani running. And you've got Eric Adams running, and you've got Curtis Lewa running. Curtis Lewa, for people who don't know, is the head of the Guardian Angels, which is this kind of quasi-vigilante group that's been around New York for decades. He's running as the Republican candidate, a true Trumper. Eric Adams is the indicted or was indicted until Trump unindicted him so that he would cooperate with Trump on immigration. Current sitting mayor and Andrew Cuomo, everybody knows who Andrew Cuomo is. So there are reports that Eric Adams went down to Florida to meet with Steve Witkoff, who I guess when he's not meeting with Putin or meeting with Netanyahu or not meeting with, representatives of Hamas and Qatar and the Saudis, is now apparently trying to bring peace to the New York mayor's race. But he met with Steve Witkoff ostensibly to get a job at HUD. But of course, you'd only put a black man into HUD in the Trump administration. um, to
And it
effectively
doesn't always end up well for those guys.
No, it doesn't. I remember the last, Secretary of HUD, good old Ben Carson. Where's he been this time around?
Mm-hmm.
But also a brain scientist, a neuroscientist and neuromedical doctor was going to run HUD. Why? Because he's black. That's exactly how Donald Trump thinks. Um, so apparently there's an offer of a job for Eric Adams at HUD, and there's rumors that this is all kind of being coordinated with Cuomo, because Cuomo would be the strongest candidate against Mondani in a one-on-one race. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about this until you just said it, and I'd love to hear your thought about this, but who was more awful during COVID to Donald Trump than Andrew Cuomo? If you remember, Andrew Cuomo was getting all the accolades. People loved Andrew Cuomo during COVID. He was
Mm-hmm.
doing these daily pressers. People, CNN and everybody else would blow out their programming to watch Andrew Cuomo do these pressers. And Trump was seething because who the hell is Andrew Cuomo? Why is he getting all this attention? And why is he criticizing me, the president of the United States? Well, to have Andrew Cuomo now basically come begging to Donald Trump to clear the field for him so that he could have a one-on-one against Mondani, you're absolutely right, must be music to Donald Trump's ears. Because he's humiliating Andrew Cuomo, because once people in New York realized that Cuomo was trying to cut a deal with Donald Trump, all that's going to do is take votes away from Andrew Cuomo. I mean, listen, I was not a Zora Mondani voter in the primary. I was not an Andrew Cuomo voter in the primary either. But my God, everything Andrew Cuomo is doing right now is going to make him cast a vote for Mondani just out of spite, because I can't believe they're about to cut this deal with Donald Trump. And that's what Trump loves, right? He loves humiliating Andrew Cuomo this way. And I guess this is what you're saying, right?
Well, there's two things in the last 10 years that Donald Trump has said that I think are more telling into his soul and his intentions than anything. The first one was, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any support. He told us, and he was right. I think this Epstein thing is a little bit different. People are like, wait a second, that guy just shot somebody on Fifth Avenue. Aren't we going to arrest? I think that's changing. The other thing is when he was in the midst of his tariff chaos, and he said, they're all kissing my ass. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
That is the blood that runs through Trump's veins. It is the air that he breathes. I'm the big guy. I'm the boss. I'm John Gotti. They are all, I need a favor from you, sir. I'll give you this favor, but one day you're going to do something for me. It's
Yeah.
straight out of the fucking Godfather. He loves his ass kissed. So what you're talking about is Cuomo kissing his ass. Now, maybe one day there's going to be a conversation with him and Bobby where he's like, Bobby, I think I got rid of you. I got to get rid of you. And Bobby starts begging. Imagine that scenario. I think you're making a mistake, sir. A Kennedy kissing his ass. It's all about kissing his ass. It's all Tim. I was going to say Tim Apple.
Tim Cook.
Tim Cook, yeah. Bringing that gold.
Oh.
We're living in a strange movie, and everybody understands this. It's all about kissing his ass, not the ring, the ass. I'd go further, but I won't.
You can, because we're not in cable news, so it's okay. But I think we all get it, and I don't really want the visual in my head. But I get what you're saying.
I was going to say, I know this is a children's show, so
yeah,
I won't go to certain places. But that's it. So the Cuomo is kind of like that. Hey, we're both from New York. Sometimes we fight. Yeah. Sometimes we get along. I like that Cuomo guy. He doesn't like that Mondani guy.
I don't think he likes that Cuomo guy either. I think that Cuomo guy humiliated him. I think Cuomo's brother used to say stuff on CNN once in a while, not always, that he didn't like. So I think the Cuomos are on a shit list. I'm sure Mario probably didn't respect him back in the day.
But I think Trump, for forgets that. I mean, how many people
Oh,
in
I
his
don't think he forgets
cabinet?
it.
Marco Rubio. What is Marco
Because they
Rubio?
well, but that's the point of what you're saying, I guess. I'm arguing your point here, which is Marco Rubio is abasing himself every single day on behalf of
Right.
Andrew Cuomo. And Marco Rubio, who was one of the biggest Russia hawks in the Senate, Marco
Yes.
Rubio, who authored the election interference in 2016.
I'll
The
do
Senate Intelligence Committee, and Marco Rubio is now basically saying, "Oh yeah, Russia is not bad, and the whole thing was a hoax in 2016. And by the way, I'm going to sit there as you humiliate Vladimir Zelensky, despite the fact that Zelensky was somebody that Marco Rubio was a huge fan of back, I don't know, a year ago, less. And Rubio sat there like a little bitch and kind of shivering into the couch, not in a J.D. Vance way, but in his own kind of Marco Rubio way. And what you have here is a very humiliated Marco Rubio. Same with Ted Cruz, right? Ted Cruz is trying to out Trump now. He's going after J.B. Pritzker based on J.B. Pritzker's weight, which is hilarious considering, Marco Rubio is not exactly in the best shape of his, sorry, Ted Cruz is not in the best shape of his life. But the point is, he is doing Trump's bidding, despite the fact that all Trump did was humiliate him and his wife and his dad in 2016. So I guess I'm making your point, which is that he's going to make Cuomo humiliate himself. I don't think Trump is going to be like, hey, we're like New York boys together now. I think he loves to have, as you said, his ass kissed and much more. And Andrew Cuomo is, I guess, doing that right now.
Yeah. Look, do you remember what Bobby Kennedy said about Trump
Yeah, of course.
when he was running for president?
Of course.
And so I think Trump is like, look, I don't care what you said about me yesterday, as long as you kiss my ass today. That's it. Because Trump only sees 5 seconds in front of him because he's a sociopath. You and I might do, you know what? I shouldn't say that because there's actually tape of me saying the opposite. That's what rational people do. That's what
Yeah.
non-sociopaths do. A sociopath just says whatever he wants to say, whatever.
And
He's not thinking. So how many people have talked shit about Trump who are now in his inner circle? Steve Bannon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So that's why I say, like, if you try to understand Trump, it's just kiss my ass now. That's what I need. That's what I want. Nothing else will matter.
but is it kiss my ass now because I just want my ass kissed? Or does it go further and say, kiss my ass now because I want to humiliate you?
I
I
will
want
humiliate you
I want to
later.
abase you.
Later.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't noticed, people, no matter how loyal you are to me, you will eventually, all of you, like Rick Wilson says, everything Trump touches dies. You will all, and Kayleigh McEnany ended up under the bus. I mean, could you get more loyal than that? So that's what fuels him. It's hard for us to think like that, but that's what you have to do to understand or predict what he may or may not do. Um,
Yeah.
we have 10 years of it, so we should learn from that.
And, to the Kennedy point, it's not just that. It's that Cheryl Hines, Kennedy's wife, who is an actress, and of course, Trump always wanted to make it big in Hollywood, and I think resents that Hollywood rejected him, was obviously a big anti-Trumper. Larry David, with whom she did that show for 20 years, or 25 years, I guess, is a huge anti-Trumper. And it wasn't enough that he got Kennedy. He got her to show up to Mar-a-Lago and socialize and kiss the ring. And I guess she did it for love or whatever the hell reason she's doing it. But that must have also been a little bit sweet to have somebody who was part of a show that skewered Trump so well
Well,
suddenly hang out at Mar-a-Lago, also kissing his ass, as you said. And
it's
Cheryl
Hollywood.
Hines, I mean, I don't know. Listen, I think about that all the time. I love my husband, I mean, so much, but if he suddenly woke up tomorrow and said, I'm gonna go join Trump's cabinet and I need you to come along, I don't know. I
You
don't
wouldn't go. You wouldn't be like, for which job?
I
For which
think
job? What's the pay? Do I have to move to DC?
no. I mean, is that a reason to get divorced when you really love your husband? I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't be showing up at Mar-a-Lago.
Well,
That would not be a condition of of the job.
the first time I had Anthony Scaramucci on my podcast,
Mhm.
The Back Room with Andy Ostroy, um,
Yes, we're gonna plug that. Everybody, go to the back room with Andy Ostroy. I have been on Andy's podcast a lot. He's fantastic, as you can tell.
Oh,
So
stop.
listen. Oh, it's true.
Stop.
Oh, I'm gonna say it
Stop.
anyway. So please listen to it. Where can people find it as we're plugging it right now?
Apple, Spotify, everywhere.
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 Okay,
Everywhere you get
great.
your podcast.
And you're also on
So
Substack.
I am on Substack.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, and I'm a mad tweeter and all that jazz
Awesome.
threads and so Mooch is a really smart guy,
Very smart
super
guy.
smart. Like he's that guy that like brings up quotes from like
Mhm.
300 years. Like he's book smart. He's politically smart. He's a really intelligent, bright man. And I said to him, Mooch, how does somebody like you, who's super smart, in my opinion, find his way into the Trump administration? And he goes, you know what, Andy? I'm an Italian kid from Long Island. Now I'm sitting in the Oval Office staring at the President of the United States. It's like a drug.
Well, you wanna hear the story of Mooch actually, because I was there for all of it. So Mooch and I worked together at Fox. Actually, was Mooch working at Fox or just all at Fox all the time? Anyway, the point is when I was working at Fox, Mooch was there all the time. So he and I got to know each other really well. He owns the Hunt and Fish Club in Midtown, so everybody used to kinda hang out at his, restaurant and his bar. Great guy. I mean, truly a great guy. And Mooch Trump was like, as Mooch said to me once, I forgot how many candidates there were. Let me say there were 10 candidates in 2016. I don't remember how many, but let's say the number was 10. Mooch said to me at the time when he was going into the administration, if there were 10 people in that primary, I Donald Trump was 11th in terms of my choice. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was never a Trumper. I forgot who he started out with, but it certainly wasn't Trump. And he like, as they kept falling and falling and falling, Mooch would cycle down to the next one who wasn't Trump. And I think what ended up happening was Mooch was a Republican, and I think he, at the time, probably thought that Trump was going to govern. A lot of people did. They were wrong, and I could have told them they were wrong then, but a lot of people believe this who are smart, that Trump was actually not going to be crazy once he got into the office, that the office would change him. And I think Mooch went down there. Mooch went down there because he hated Brian Priebus. And he went down there and he hated like Sean Spicer, I think. And listen, before Mooch, in the 11 days that he was there, he got rid of both of them. So Mooch, had a good run in terms of what he wanted to accomplish when he was down there. I think he realized very quickly that Trump was never going to be changed and that
Mm-hmm.
Trump was a total moron. And Trump firing him for something that wouldn't even be something Trump would blink at today, which was, cursing out some reporter without, thinking he was off the record that ended up being on the record. I don't think Trump. I mean, that was a bonus for Trump. So I think Trump just understood Anthony Scaramucci was never going to be his guy because Anthony's too smart for that, and Anthony ultimately had too much pride for that. So that's my view of Scaramucci, who I love. I agree. Um, he made a bad decision, although I guess for him a decision that made sense at the time. But you see how people get sucked in, right? It's the
Yeah.
presidency. Of course, you're going to work in the Oval Office.
Powers,
Of
access,
course,
money.
yeah. And it's kind of it's kind of sick for a variety of reasons. But to your point, at which point do people wake up and realize like you're going to be humiliated? Now Anthony kind of leans into it, and the Scaramucci's he kind of leans into it and jokes about it. But and he's Anthony Scaramucci, so he was able to kind of reinvent himself back to who he was before Trump. But
Mm-hmm.
most of these people have no life outside of Trump.
Mm-hmm. He
The
he likes to destroy people. He likes to destroy their lives because, like I said, he's empty inside, and people like that, the only way they can feel good is to put other people down. I mean, like I said, he's the president. He got elected twice. He got all the prosecution. Like, how is he not just happy and like, you know what? Let me just try to make America great again. Let me do my job.
well, that
He's
brings me back.
still driven by that anger you spoke about, that I am your retribution. Like I will mash you into the ground. And I don't think he ever forgets, like Marco Rubio. He never forgets what Marco Rubio said. He tucks it
That's what
back
I
here.
mean. I
Bobby
agree.
Kennedy. Bobby
Hmm.
Kennedy called him like a sicko. I mean, JD Vance called him a Nazi. He's vice president. Okay.
Well, he's
I mean,
vice president, but
he's
let
America's Hitler.
let's
He's
see what
America's
happens.
Hitler. That's
Let's
what
see what
your
happens.
vice president said to you.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't
And
care about the past until it's time to care about the past.
yeah, but to underscore how sick he is, right? Like, it's one thing to say, okay, you said really awful shit about me. I'm going to fire you. But what I can't get past, and the part that just scared people, I don't know why this didn't get more attention at the time because it's just it's so emblematic of who he is, which is a complete and utter psycho. Just he's a psychopath. There's no other way to describe it. You are the president of the United States. It is your job to protect American citizens, irrespective of whether you agree with them or not. Let me amend. If I saw somebody, if you or I or anybody watching right now saw somebody walking down the street and you saw somebody coming up to them, pointing a gun at them, and you had the ability to stop it, of course you'd stop it because you don't want to see somebody die needlessly. It doesn't matter if that person's wearing a MAGA hat or if that person's wearing, whatever. Um, you just don't want people killed. But what I don't understand, which is something that's so psychotic, is that when Iran put the hit out on John Bolton, and Joe Biden gave John Bolton Secret Service protection because he did not want Iran killing an American citizen, despite the fact that John Bolton is certainly no fan of Joe Biden, is certainly no fan of the Democratic Party. Trump, within a day of coming, or a couple of days of coming back to office, pulled that Secret Service protection and publicly, not privately, publicly did it to send a message to Iran, open season, go get John Bolton.
He just did the same thing with Kamala Harris.
Yep.
I mean,
I mean,
it's
yeah, yes.
cruelty. It's you would think like, what happens if something bad happens to John Bolton? What would Trump think? He's gonna, you know what he's gonna think? He's gonna think the same shit that he thought when he stood watching on TV thousands of people storm the Capitol and beat the shit out of cops. He stood for 3 hours and was like, "My people,
Yeah.
they're doing that for me."
Yep.
And that would be the same thing he thinks if something happened, God forbid, to Bolton, John Bolton, or anybody else. Like that person did that for me because he's just I have George Conway on my podcast a lot. He's coming up again in a couple of weeks. It's this thing we do. It's like, why did he do that? And it's almost like we say it at the same time because he's a sociopath. Like,
Yeah.
that's the answer. That's why, like, when I watch, the cable news shows, and it's 24 hours or whatever, they have to fill a lot of airtime. So there's a lot of panel discussions or whatever. It's like, okay, Donald Trump just said the most crazy thing today. I want to turn to my panel now. Why would he do that? To me, there's only one answer, but that doesn't prompt a discussion. That's like, the answer is because he's a sociopath. And then the host would have to go, okay, next subject. Like,
Well, no,
that show would be over in 10 minutes.
it's worse than that because, and I'm on those panel shows a lot, so I can tell you why it's so bad and why I'm so over cable news. The answer is because he's a sociopath, and the response from the host would be, "Well, we can't say that. He hasn't been diagnosed, and you're making an allegation here that's in support, not supported." Because somebody in standards is saying we're going to get our asses sued if you say that he's a sociopath because there's no diagnosis of sociopathology.
Yeah. But
And,
even worse, what
yeah,
happens is that by not doing that, they're basically saying, so let's just talk about it as if it's normal. And we'll have a
well,
discussion. We'll go around the panel and we'll normalize it. Like it's just a normal political thing that would happen today.
listen,
But it's not.
what's happening increasingly on these panel shows, and again, I am on them, so I can tell you what's happening and why I'm kind of really getting more and more disgusted. And you've seen me less and less on them for that reason. I say the earth is round, and some MAGA person says the earth is flat. And then we have what Fox will call a fair and balanced debate, and what anybody else in the network, any other network, would basically say. We're going to have a discussion about that. So you're basically giving equal weight to somebody saying the earth is round and equal weight
Yes.
to somebody saying the earth is flat. There's no
Yes.
equal weight to it.
No.
There's no equal weight to do vaccines save lives or do they harm lives? I don't know. Let's have a discussion about it. There's no discussion. When a medical doctor is telling you vaccines save lives and some guy who's a former recovering heroin addict who has a brain worm who dumps bear carcasses in Central Park and has whale juice on his roof, that guy is telling you, no, actually vaccines kill people. Oh, okay. Well, we'll have a discussion about that.
On the off chance that there are any MAGA or MAHA people listening, watching this today, um, Bobby Kennedy Jr. is neither a doctor or a scientist. Now, in the middle of the night, if your child wakes up with 104 fever, you're probably going to take them to a doctor, not somebody like Bobby Kennedy Jr. Except now, through your votes and the votes of your elected representatives, Bobby Kennedy Jr. is actually, in fact, in charge of your child's health. What do you want to do about that?
I mean, all I keep thinking about is how grateful I am that my son has all the vaccines that he needs already, that he's old enough to have gotten the vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I were pregnant today, what I would do, because these vaccines, as we know, take years. I mean, years, the vaccine schedule. So by the time you come up for dose number 2 or dose number 3, this shit may be banned.
Right.
And now he's talking about getting rid of the HPV vaccine, which, by the way, is like the leading preventative cause of cervical cancer. So you don't want to give kids the HPV vaccine before they become sexually active so that in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they don't get cervical cancer from HPV. I mean, like, it's just, it's psychotic. I mean, it's insane. And the fact that you have Bill Cassidy, parentheses doctor, and other people in that Senate who know better, who voted to confirm this bullshit, is psychotic to me. It makes them sociopaths because whereas Trump's entire modus operandi is revenge, their entire modus operandi is self-preservation.
Well,
Because having that little Senate pin is more important than saving lives.
here's the harsh and terrifying reality of where we are today. The single greatest threat to our democracy is the federal government and the United States president. The single greatest threat to the health of every single American is the Secretary of the Health and Human Services and the federal government. Just let those words sink in.
Yeah,
The
that's a
federal
great
government
point.
is invading cities. Invading cities. Think about that. Troops on U.S. soil.
And you have,
All right, kids, it's party time.
yeah, I mean, and then you have senators like the senator from Louisiana, Bill Cassidy, saying again, oh, yeah, it's a good thing we have ICE in New Orleans because we need more police protection. Then we have the military coming in here because we don't have enough police. You defunded the police.
Right.
Provide federal funds.
How woke that is.
I mean, provide funding to fund the police. Give a few block grants to Louisiana and have them send some money to New Orleans to hire some cops.
Yeah.
You know how it's done because you're a fucking senator.
Like, was it like $800 billion was cut in federal
Yeah.
spending for state and local
Yeah.
police forces?
So, okay, well, it's all good in New Orleans that we're gonna have the military there now. Because, like, listen, I keep saying this, I grew up in the Soviet Union. And there wasn't something called the police in the Soviet Union. They had something called the militia. They literally called what we would call the police, they would call the militia.
Mhm.
And that's what is that what you want in your streets?
We have it now.
We do. But I mean, is that what people want? To keep them quote unquote safe? Because the cops are doing, I mean, like, listen, we live in New York. The NYPD is probably the single greatest police force in the world in terms of security, in terms of intelligence, in terms of safety. This is why New York is the safest, largest city in the country.
And gender and race and religion diverse.
And a woman who's the police commissioner who I know and who's fantastic, Jessica Tisch. And so the point is, it's a great police force. You don't need military people with guns and God knows what else patrolling our streets. We got it. We got it.
Look, the MAGA folks, I look, my nickname is Optimistic Andy because I still believe in the good of people. I still believe that a majority of my fellow Americans are good, decent people, and that ultimately make the right choice. Ultimately, doesn't mean they make bad choices first. Doesn't, but here's the thing, like, they just have to think a little bit if they can and say, okay, even if the crime was rampant and going way up in DC, which it's not, it's just the actual opposite.
Yeah.
And even if sending troops was justified and a good decision, the crime problem in DC doesn't end in 9 days. Okay. So when Donald Trump says, boom, done, no more crime in DC, he is full of shit. Okay. Uh, he's all about the optics. Send in the troops, get some pictures, send them around like where all the tourists are, not to the actual crime,
Yeah.
high crime areas, but like, and then go in, go out, boom. And then I take credit for the actual drop in crime rates that have already been happening. So will MAGA ever think? My take on this is that Donald Trump's base is everyone who voted for him. So if we expect MAGA to do that, it's not going to happen. That's an unrealistic goal. But if MAGA does this, given how elections now are won and lost on the margins, if 3, 4, 5 million people on the edge of MAGA decide, you know what, this shit's too crazy for me. I like a strong border. I don't like moms being ripped apart from their kids by masked, unidentified men in white vans who I never heard from again because their habeas corpus rights and due process have been stripped from them. Like, I didn't vote for that. I voted for a strong border. I voted for uh, grocery prices to come down. I didn't vote for them to go up. Blah, blah, blah. I think that's happening. I've spoken to people in that movement. I've spoken to people like Rich Logis, who runs Leaving MAGA. He was in MAGA for 7 years. Now he helps people get out of MAGA.
It's like a cult.
It is a cult,
Yeah.
but people are leaving. Independence, he's fried with independence right now. And it's not going to get any better for him. It's only going to get worse because he lost independence. He's going to continue to start losing more and more of his base. So when people talk about his base, we can't think that like MAGA still exists. MAGA will always exist. But will it be this or will it be this? And so I'm seeing the progress. It's hard to sort of see that if you are not obsessively watching and talking to people, but he's not doing himself any justice. People moms who are trying to get their kids vaccinated at CBS who voted for him, you think they're going to be happy with Bobby Kennedy and his vaccine policies? Like, so it just is going to take time. I mean, the man has only been in office for 9 months, 8 months, which it seems like 8 years. But I think liberals, because of the way we think, we want everything now. Shouldn't it be over? Shouldn't they have abandoned him
Well,
by now? Shouldn't it? But it's an erosion that takes time. It's like he's a speeding train. Pull that cord, the train doesn't just immediately stop. It goes for miles before it stops. The Trump train, is slowing down.
you're assuming and that's absolutely true if you're assuming we're gonna have a democracy in time to vote in the midterms next year with the gerrymandering that's happening and the redistricting that's happening and just the barriers to voting that they're creating in urban areas and traditionally Black and brown communities. I'm a little concerned about what that vote. We're going to always have elections. I'm just very concerned about what those elections look like, and how hard it's going to be for people to vote in on the margins. Right? What Georgia's going to do to make it harder, for example, to have drop boxes in urban areas if job boxes still exist. Obviously, vote by mail, which helps Democrats in the sense that Democrats tend to work, so they don't have much time to vote, so they sometimes vote by mail. All of these things, I think, are making it, not to mention the redistricting that they're doing in Missouri and Texas and Florida and other places. So I don't know. I mean, that's the difficulty of all of this, and so I'm very concerned about that. And um, We'll see. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. If we had normal elections in 2026, you're absolutely right. We would win the House in a landslide. I'm not even sure that the Senate would be out of reach for us, but they're making it hard. They're making it hard.
I was listening to, I think it was Deadline the other day, but Nicole Wallace, and she
Yep.
had Matthew Dowd on, who's a typically former
Yeah, yeah.
Republican
Republican.
operative. You know who he is,
Yep.
clever Trumper. He said something interesting. He said, if you would have asked me a few months ago if the Democrats have a chance of taking the Senate in 26, I would have said, hell no. Now, I think it's not a bad opportunity. I think it could be likely. And so we tend, a lot of us tend to go through life like this. And with Trump, there's so much shit that comes at you every single day, every minute of every day. It's
Yeah.
exhausting. And when it's exhausting, it wears you down. It wears you down physically, it wears you down mentally, and it's easy to say, we're so fucked. But it's just as easy to look and go, under normal circumstances, an incumbent president gets shellacked in the midterms. Well, think about all the chaos and destruction and the terminations and all the shit that's going on. Why would we not think there's going to be a blue wave? What would not cause a blue wave? I don't think this race will be on the margins. I think it's going to be a bloodbath a political bloodbath. I want to make that clear. Uh, for the Republican Party, and they know it. Donald Trump didn't get on the phone and give me 5 votes because he thinks he's sailing through the midterms, or that he doesn't think there's going to be midterms. They know there's going to be
Oh,
midterms,
there's going to be midterms.
and they know they're going to lose those midterms. But at the end of the day, between what Newsom is doing in California and where this all may shake out, how many incremental seats they pick up, if any, at the end of the day is questionable. And how many people might they piss off? And how might they lose races because of the way they're carving up certain districts? Nothing is guaranteed, and there's no conventional wisdom anymore. And I think they're shooting themselves in the foot because maybe I'm crazy. I do think Americans, at the end of the day, the majority of them will do the right thing because it's affecting them. See, you and I can't tell people anything. That's like they don't say, oh, the messaging. We don't need messaging. We need people sitting at home balancing their checkbook going, fuck, I have no money because I'm paying more for that. Like, we don't have to tell them anything. They're feeling it. They're feeling it. And when they feel it, when they lose jobs, unemployment, look at the unemployment numbers. When they lose jobs, or their parents lose jobs, or their sisters or brothers or friends lose jobs, and they can't afford to pay they feel it. That's when shit turns. I still believe in Carville's mantra, it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
And he does not have the economy. And when you look at the polls, like 75% of people polled say he's doing an awful job on the economy. So there's a lot of reason to have hope and be optimistic. It's just really hard to do that when shit is coming at you nonstop and it all looks really bleak. The courts, he's losing in the courts. Most of this stuff is going to end up in the Supreme Court for sure. And I think what's going to happen with the Supreme Court is going to be 2 buckets of cases. One is, all right, let's give him this shit, which is going to be ugly and hurtful to a lot of people and sort of pushes the limits of democracy. And then there's the other bucket where we make him king. I don't think they're going to go in that bucket. They'll give him wins, maybe a lot of wins. But at the end of the day, they're not letting him turn America into Turkey. That's that, because what do they have? They have lifetime appointments. What do they have to gain from that? They all have kids.
Oh,
They all have
that we could do a whole separate show on that. I actually disagree with you on that. I think there are people on that court who are very much ideologically aligned with him and believe in executive power the way that it should be. And I think that there are others like John Roberts who are just terrified. They have lifetime appointments. I don't know if they're terrified of MAGA coming for them, or if they just don't want the opprobrium from Trump, or they don't want to be called out, or they don't want to put their life or their family's life in danger. I don't know what it is. But look, they're about to gut the remainder of the Civil Rights Act. I don't know what they're going to do in the Federal Reserve, but they already allowed Trump to fire people in quote unquote quasi-independent agencies because of executive power. Now they said, but maybe not the Federal Reserve. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens because if they allow him to gut the Federal Reserve, and based on their previous rulings, I don't see how they don't allow him to do that. Then we are going to be Turkey, literally, because that's what Turkey did. Turkey took over, Erdogan took over the central bank, and inflation shot up. And it's going to be a complete and utter shit show. So, I don't put much faith in the courts. The Republicans did something that Democrats never did that is brilliant. They spent 30 years taking over the federal judiciary. We don't have a federalist society on our side the way they do. We don't have a go pack to take over state legislatures the way that they do. We don't have and never have had the infrastructure because Bill Clinton's famous line always applied. We fall in love and they fall in line. We
Right.
always look for a messiah, whether it's Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or somebody else is going to be our guy. And we don't build infrastructure that is independent of that guy or that woman. And that's a huge problem. And if I had, George Soros money or Michael Bloomberg money and I cared about this democracy, that's what I would do because the payoff's not going to come next year or the year after or even this decade, but it will come as the Republicans did, it will come decades in advance when the
Sure.
infrastructure exists to literally from the ground up build courts. Because I'll tell you this, in the 70s and 80s, Democrats controlled the majority of court seats, elected court seats. Democrats controlled the majority of state legislatures. Democrats controlled the House for 40 years. All of that's gone. And it became gone the minute that the Republicans got together and decided that they were going to create this ecosystem, whether through Federal Society or GoPac or these other organizations. So I don't have the faith in the court that you do because I think this has been preordained for decades to get us to this point.
Yeah. Well, look, if you said to me 8 months, 9 months ago, do you think everything that's happened so far with the law firms, universities, the media capitulation, ABC, CBS, I would have been like, no, I didn't expect that. So with Trump, anything is possible. But at the end of the day, I still believe that this country has been through a lot of stuff in the last 249 years. And I do believe we'll get through Trump. And I do believe there are certain guardrails that will keep it together. Because if I didn't believe that, I probably would jump off a roof.
Well, don't jump off a roof because it is so wonderful to have you here and your podcast, The Back Room with Andy Ostroy, which everybody should listen to and subscribe to, is fantastic. And I do hope people do that. And I hope you'll come back because this was such a great discussion and it gave me about 5 different ideas for different columns and other things that I want to pursue. So thank you for that. And
Well,
thanks for
th-
not for having me. Thanks for being here for me to allow you to have the pleasure of having you on is what I'm trying to say.
well, thank you for inviting me. And sure, anytime, just let me know.
Thanks, Andy. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.
Take care.